Alright guys, so this video is to show how to remove, repair, and replace your Wrangler Rubicon sway bar disconnect, the electronic one. People say that they go bad a lot. They don't really go bad, they just stick typically. They can go bad, but it's not super common. They don't have the greatest sealing surface, so you kind of go through and reseal into everything and clean everything up inside, and then it should work just fine. I ran into that case on mine. Mine is on a 2015 Rubicon, and I've already had issues with it. So first you're going to start off with a 5/8 and or 16 mil socket. And you're going to remove the 4 bolts that hold your sway bar bushings on. There'll be 2 bolts on passenger and driver side. First, we'll start off with removing your sway bar end links. This will just make everything easier, so you have more play to rotate the sway bar mechanism around. So I have quick disconnects. I'm not sure on the socket sizes. I think there's something goofy like an 18 millimeter. So you just remove sway bar end links on both sides, and with those removed, that will allow you to rotate the entire sway bar itself, and that will make your life much easier. So after you do that, I will come through and do the electrical connector here. There's actually 2 slides within the connector, and that makes it a pain in the butt once it gets all packed full of mud and grit and everything. You can see I've smashed mine into the rocks a few times, so that probably doesn't help the seal at all. But there's a little push tab that you have to push to cam this locking lever. So you push in on the black tab, and then you slide the lock. I've already had this apart, so it goes really easy, and it took a bunch of wiggling and prying to get mine to come apart. So once you fight with that for long enough, you can get it to come apart. There, so your electric connection is apart. Now you take your 16 mil or 5/8 and start disconnecting. Now this thing isn't necessarily heavy, it's just extremely awkward. So with one person you can do it, it's just not much fun. So I'm going to go ahead and remove these 4 bolts. Impacts make it a lot easier as well. Switch hands and grab these other 2. Try not to get this crap in your eye. There we go, and the weight should rest. I'm going to drop a bolt. Alright, so now comes the fun part of trying to wiggle this big awkward thing out. There we go. Alright, so we'll get this out from under the Jeep and kind of get it set up so we can see it better. Okay. Alright, so now that we've got the entire sway bar mechanism out from under the Jeep, first we're going to start off with taking off the actual electronic mechanism. So there are just 3 15 millimeter bolts on this one. Zip these out real quick. Alright, now mine's going to come apart a little bit harder because I resealed mine with RTV. There, so once you got that apart, mine the first time I took it apart actually poured a bunch of water out from inside this mechanism. So this basically, this is the expensive part. A lot of guys, they'll get their blinking light that won't go off, they take it to a dealership, and they'll charge about 90 bucks to read the code, and then they'll probably just sell you a new one of these, and these run anywhere from $1,000 to $1,300. So this is definitely worth a try to at least see if it works, since it's free. This little plunger here is the actual sensor that tells the computer in the Jeep whether the sway bar is actually connected or disconnected. These will stick sometimes. You can free them up a lot of times, but sometimes you can't. I've seen where people break them off. They're actually a 2-piece unit. This outer part is threaded into this inner part, and that's where they commonly snap. And then this dark peg here is the actual mechanism that slides in and out to engage your gear inside the actual gear housing. So the only thing sealing this is just this little rubber seal. So I've pumped a bunch of RTV in mine to try to help seal it up a little bit. I'm gonna have to clean it up a lot though, because it's looking pretty gunky with RTV right now. I've had this part a few times. So anyway, we'll set that aside. And you can test if this works by plugging it back into your Jeep and then hitting the sway bar button and seeing if this plunger goes in and out. And if it goes in and out, then you're golden. Everything is still in perfect working condition. So now we'll come over and remove these 5 or 6 15mm bolts over here. And this is going to separate the actual cage itself that has the shift fork and the actual ring in here. Just have one left, and this is actually free on the sway bar itself because we disconnected this bolt, which is just a post for this isolator. Maybe. There we go, and now I'll have to pry a little bit to break that RTV bond. There we go. Alright, so you have on the long shaft side, you have a spring, and that actually pushes the fork, the entire shift fork and gear back. So when you are disconnected, this is what is applying the force to reconnect the actual mechanism itself, to reconnect your sway bar. Set that aside, and then you've got the actual gear itself on the shift fork, and the shift fork usually gets pretty well stuck in there. So what I had to do the first time was, if you look in this back side, it's going to be hard with it as dark as it is, but there's a small hole and a large hole. You can tap on either one. You can tap inside on either one and slowly and lightly tap with some sort of punch or screwdriver just to knock that shift fork out. I should be able to push mine out by hand. Here we go. So now mine is coming out by hand, pressing on that. So there, that's pulled apart. So you've got the actual shift fork off. And be careful, because there is a small washer right here, and that will come off if there's not much grease. Mine has got the crap greased out of it because I didn't want this issue to happen again. So that will fall out if the grease isn't holding it in place. So now that is a part. What I would do is, you want to clean your mating surface. There's actually a paper gasket that comes from the factory, and I don't trust it. So remove the paper gasket and then clean up the mating surfaces with some sort of brake cleaner or any type of cleaner that doesn't leave an oily residue, and then scrape it clean. Try to use a plastic scraper so you're not messing with the aluminum. So there is that actual mechanism itself. Clean inside this hole here, and you'll want to clean this surface here on the shift fork. That is where the corrosion happens and makes it hard to slide, because this actually slides in and out. And then I took the actual gear itself off from the shift fork, cleaned inside the channel and the fork, and then just greased the crap out of it. So then for reassembly, it's just reverse of what we've done. You just grease everything up, slide it inside, and it might give you a little bit of a hassle to try to get the ring gear all lined up onto the gear end of the sway bar. So it might give you a little bit of a fit. You just kind of got to finesse it. There, and it dropped right on for me. There, and then we'll just clean up our mating surfaces real quick, and then we'll get right back to showing the rest of the reinstallation. Alright, so now that we've got everything packed with grease and cleaned up so everything slides freely, we'll take some RTV. I just don't trust the stock paper gasket. This is just ultra black RTV silicone, and just kind of get a good booger along there. You don't need a whole lot. You just want it to be able to smush and fill. And I usually go through and actually dab it around with my finger. People say not to mess with the bead, Some people say too, I haven't had it not work by just smushing it around with your finger. Then you kind of know you've got coverage, and you'll have extra, but that's just how it goes playing with this nasty putty. So you just kind of make sure you got good even coverage all the way around. I used about 3 times more than I needed to, but that's alright. Alright, so now that we've got that bead on there, we're going to take and put our spring back on that little post, and that is actually what applies pressure to the shift fork to retract it back in. And we'll take our short side, also greased up and cleaned out. And this one you might have to use a little bit of wiggling to get this sprocket to line up with that ring. So now you just kind of take it, and hopefully your bolt holes are lined up with your sprocket still. If not, you can twist around the sway bar end itself, maybe. It's a lot easier to use a vise as well. There it goes. So that just clicked into place. And now we take and replace our 15mm bolts. And I probably grabbed a 16. Maybe the holes aren't quite lined up. Yeah. Just kind of start them all by hand. Don't use any type of impact to get them in there. This is, not that you ever should, but this is a steel bolt going into aluminum, and they don't like to play together at all. So the aluminum will strip extremely easy, and you'll regret it if you cross thread it. So we'll get these all in, and then we are ready to install our electric unit. Alright, so now we're going to just put a light bead where the electrical, or not the electrical connector, but where the actual electrical unit rests on the whole assembly. And I'll go through and just kind of dab my finger around. This is the seal that's most prone to leaking, is this surface here. Just get kind of an even layer around there. Wipe your fingers off. And grab your electrical box, and there's kind of a D shape, and that matches with the D shape here. And you just kind of gotta finagle it around until the plunger drops in. Right there you heard the plunger click into place. And then just start your bolts by hand. And once we get this together, then we'll get back under the Jeep and get the whole unit installed. Alright, now that we're under the Jeep, it's a lot easier if you start with your sway bar pointing up like this. So you feed it up in, and then kind of try to rotate it back towards you. It's going to cause you some grief trying to get this rubber bushing, but you gotta have, come on, gotta have room. So sometimes you just gotta get a little bit aggressive. Maybe, there we go, you just slide it over to the passenger side of the vehicle a little bit, and then that, oh, there we go, that gives you enough room to kind of get it up in there, and twist it back, and then it should kind of drop into place. So now that we've got it close, go ahead and start a bolt so you're not holding it all by hand. Once you get one bolt started on one side, then it's easy just to start another bolt on the other side. Just go over to the driver's side. And start that bolt. And I will just run these two up into place just to hold it. So that's just going to hold it for demonstration purposes as of now. Now we can rock the entire sway bar up and connect the end links. Oh, I gotta get this other side up a little bit. Feed it down over. There. Okay, so now those are in place. Now we'll go ahead, zip the last two in, and then button up our electrical connections. Now we'll go ahead and make our electrical connection. Take a bunch of dielectric grease and grease inside both the male and female ends. This will make your life a lot easier if you ever have to disconnect it again and take things apart. Also, it helps kind of waterproof the connection as well and prevent corrosion. So go ahead and finagle that plug up in there. You're locked into place, and then you just take this big lever and cam it over. It takes quite a bit of force. It feels like you're going to break it, and then eventually you'll hear a soft click, and that means that thumb depressing thing right there, that tab, is locked onto this gray lever. So your connection is locked into place. So let's head up and check it out inside the cab and make sure everything works. Alright, so now we're inside the cab of the Jeep, and we're going to hit our sway bar disconnect button in 4 low. And we'll see, it might take a little bit of a rock to engage. Our light is still flashing. There, okay, so now our sway bar is officially disconnected. So I'm going to lock my diffs in, and we're just going to kind of climb up a little bank and show that it is disconnected. Alright, if you want to hop out, see how everything's looking.